Are the Kansas City Chiefs eyeing a specific player in the 2024 NFL Draft? That's the topic of today's show here on the Chiefs Report by Chat Sports. I am your host, Jace Andrews. And let's say it's time for draft season. There have been 14 either scheduled or already occurred top 30 visits for the Kansas City Chiefs. We're going to break them all down position by position and talk to you about what this means and how exactly I see every single one of the guys that have traveled to Kansas City to speak with Brett Veach, Andy Reid, and just be around the facility for a day. Obviously, though, we are less than 3 weeks away from the NFL Draft, and so how excited are you getting? Because I don't know about you. I'm feeling a 10 or 11 on this scale because it's getting close. I love the NFL Draft. I'm excited to see what Brett Veach does. A lot of options for him. Very good draft for the positions the Chiefs need at both offensive tackle and wide receiver. It's going to be a fun couple of days, and I hope you join us here on the Chiefs Report. We'll have multiple videos out throughout that time range. But scale your your excitement in that day, 1 through 10, 1 being least excited, 10 being most excited. All right, Chiefs have had 14 top 30 visits. Here's how they spread out. 3 wide receivers, 3 defensive linemen, 5 offensive linemen. I'll tell you what that means here in a moment. And then there has been 1 of a tight end, running back, and safety. All have had at least 1 visit. Let's start with the wide receivers because obviously they are the fun players to talk about, to be quite frank with you. Jaylen McMillan, the Washington wide receiver, could be available around day 2, and he came to Kansas City to meet with both Brett Veach and Andy Reid. This past year on the, what was the runner-up of NCAA football, the Washington Huskies, 553 yards, 12.3 on the average, 5 touchdowns, 5 drops. Not a great drop, but also there's much worse numbers you could have in 11 games, considering he had 45 receptions on top of it and an average of 12.3. Played a majority of his time at Washington, as the only year he really didn't play was 2020, played in just 3 games, having 1 reception for 16 yards. Hey, it's an average of 16 yards per catch at least. 2021, he had 470 yards, a 1,000-yard receiver in 2022. Obviously, though, this past year with Michael Penix Jr. and Romo Dunze, and just a very good offense, Jalen Polk on there. He wasn't the main target, but still, I think he's a solid day 2 pick. You look at that 1,000-yard season in 2022, when he had a bigger role on the team, I feel as though he could be a really good guy to put on the Chiefs roster, and it kind of fits in well with the type of receivers that we've seen Brett Veach select in the past. Would not be surprised for the Chiefs to snag him on day 2. Let's go to another day 2 option, Javon Baker from the University of Central Florida. I'm going to say straight up, I love this guy. I think he's great. Had over 1,000 yards this past year in UCF, 21.9 average. Holy cow. I'm an average guy, and that's nice. 7 touchdowns, 6 drops, 52 receptions. Javon has done a lot of good things, and I think the bigger thing that people don't realize, he was an Alabama receiver back in 2021. Obviously committed there, played there in 2020, having just 2 receptions for 15 yards, then played there for 11 games in which he got little action, 7 for 101. Transferred to UCF, lit the stage up in 2 years. 796 with a 14.2 average and 5 touchdowns, 1,139 with a 21.9 average and 7 touchdowns. I love Javon in so many different ways. I think he's agile. He's able to stretch the field. He's able to be under routes. He can play in the slot. He can play on the edges. You can do whatever you want with him on the offensive side of the ball. In fact, in some ways, you could use him as a sort of Kadarius Toney, Deebo Samuel type guy where you do little jet sweeps and stuff like that. Here's the thing, though. Given those 2 receivers I've just talked about, both were in day 2 picks, it seems as though they're going to go wide receiver day 2 and maybe offensive tackle day 1. So that's just the notion that I'm kind of getting from these. Again, don't know that for sure. Obviously, there's still a lot of time before the draft, and multiple things can happen, including a Rashee Rice suspension. Let's go to the 3rd wide receiver that had a visit with the Kansas City Chiefs, and that is the Oregon State guy, Anthony Gould. Now, Gould is one that I've had my eye on for a while, not necessarily because of his stats, not necessarily because of really anything that was standing out to me on the field, but he's a later round wide receiver. He's a guy that you're not going to have to worry about getting early. I would say late day 2 I'm maybe giving him some. I think day 3, honestly, is probably a better place to where you could get him. Plus, he is connected to Kansas City. His hometown is Leavenworth, Kansas, literally just an hour away, less than an hour away from Arrowhead Stadium. Did move over to the West Coast, played high school there, and then ended up at Oregon State, but still has the connection to KC. So obviously somebody to keep your eye on. 718 yards, 75 on the long, 2 touchdowns is pretty dang good. Once again, he's kind of a 3-year player. That 2020 stat line, nothing really there. In fact, nothing. 4 games, no stats, and then 185 yards, 457, 718. What I like about him, every year got better in the yardage. Obviously, that just comes with time and repertoire and understanding your coaching staff and just the team as a whole. But still, it's nice to see. Average sitting around 16.3, 16.9 over 2 years. 3 touchdowns, 2 touchdowns. It's very good numbers for a guy you can get on day 3. I want you to pick a wide receiver for the value. Would you like to get Javon Baker or Jalen McMillan in the 2nd round? Or is Anthony Gould your favorite value guy that you could get him in the 5th round or so? Type G for Gould, B for Baker, M for McMillan. What's a wide receiver you're taking here in round 2 or round 5? Let's go to the defensive line because there was 3 visits there. Marshawn Kneeland, a very good guy from Western Michigan, and then Michael Hall Jr., Ohio State, guy that I've actually talked about multiple times on here, and then Christian Boyd, somebody that I actually find really intriguing. Before I mentioned all those guys and talk to you more about them, got to tell you about one of our amazing sponsors, and that is Prize Picks. Now, obviously, football season is over, but guess what is tonight? The national championship of March Madness. It's UConn. It's Purdue. Zach Edey, will he finish off his incredible career with a championship? Well, either way you slice it, you can put some Prize Picks down, and I guarantee you, you do the ones I'm going to show you here in a minute, you're going to make your money. You can get a $100 deposit match by going to prizepicks.com/CLNS and using code CLNS. Now, Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app, and you can turn your hoops knowledge into a serious cash. Now, I trust my hoops knowledge pretty well. Here's what I've got. I've got the less on Zach Edey, points, rebounds, and assists, just because UConn has absolutely dominated everything in terms of down under. Now, I know Zach Edey is great, but I truly feel like this is a game where Edey is going to have to pass the ball away, and so I'm going less there. Going the less was Stephon Castle on 11 points, and then the more on 13.5. Donovan Clingan points. I think these are all really solid picks. You can go put these exact same ones in, or maybe even one of your own on Prize Picks right now. They also offer an injury insurance policy so that your entry stays in play even if one of your players gets injured. For basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and then does not return in the second, that player projection won't count against you, and the rest of your entry stays alive. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS for a first deposit match of up to $100. Shout out to Prize Picks. It's daily fantasy sports made easy. So does the defensive line need help? I think that's what we're all asking ourselves because, well, they got a decent of the guy. Actually, forget decent. They got every single starter back from last year. And obviously the most recent one being Michael Dana, who re-signed with the Kansas City Chiefs on a 3-year deal literally just 3 days ago on Friday, and that completed. The entire starter is coming back on the defensive line as you have Dana on the left edge, Jones and Nadi, the tackles, Karlaftis, usually on the right or left, kind of just depends. Obviously, Omenahue is injured, so he'll be back mid-season area. Felix Nduke-Uzoma, the former first-round pick, will he get some opportunity to play? I feel as though defensive ends are fine, but defensive interior, I would like a little bit more depth there. I think that I know those guys below him are good. I truly feel as though they can be positive players. Tershawn Morton, Mike Pennell, even Neil Farrell Jr. all had positive impacts when they were asked to play. However, it wouldn't be bad to get somebody else in the back burner for potentially when Derek Nottie leaves next year. Marshawn Kneeland is one that I really, really like out of these guys. I know that there's a couple of them on the board that the Chiefs have really enjoyed watching. Kneeland, though, 13 sacks over his career, 150 tackles, 28 tackles for loss. Then you look at Michael Hall Jr., and I've said this before. He reminds me of Chris Jones in a lot of ways, which is why I think he's getting looked at. His stats just weren't exactly the best of the three. Granted, I think Obviously, playing at Ohio State compared to Western Michigan and the University of Northern Iowa has something to do with that. But at the same time, you also have to realize that stats do matter. 20 tackles for loss, those nice. 6 sacks, 45 tackles. Didn't play in too many games. Christian Boyd, 149 tackles, 10.5 sacks, 22.5 tackles for loss. That was all at the FCS level, though. So if you look at this defensive line and you see these guys, you're thinking, okay, well, it probably just depends where they're going to pick them, right? Correct. I think Marshall Nealand is around a second rounder. I think Michael Hall could potentially be third or fourth. If you want to go the UNI guy, you can go in the 5th or 6th round there. Kind of just depends, obviously. A couple of different things to take into effect. Christian Boyd and Marshall Nealand, both from not exactly the most prestigious colleges. Michael Hall playing at Ohio State, but the stats not as great. All things to take into consideration. Now, here's probably why you clicked on the video. There's a lot of offensive linemen that have visited the Kansas City Chiefs and some guys who are potentially first-round picks. Christian Mahogany, Travis Glover, Jake Johning, Kingsley Suamataia, and Caden Wallace have all either scheduled to or have already visited the Kansas City Chiefs. I'll say this is an interesting assortment here of guys. Why? Because they're kind of all spread out. When you look at these guys and you're thinking, okay, what round are these all going to be taken in? Well, let's first start with Kingsley Suamataia because he's one that probably won't be there by the Chiefs' day 2 pick. So if you want him, you either have to trade up for a second rounder, trade up in the second round, or take him in the first round. Overall PFF grade of 67.5, 2 sacks allowed, 5 hits, 6 hurries, 4 penalties. Overall, a very good stat line. I like Suamataia a lot. His big board rank, 45 though, and this is where things kind of detail why they're an assortment of players. Christian Mahogany, 92, so you're talking day 3 there, and then Caden Wallace, day 2, late day 2. Caden Wallace, a day 3 pick at number 208. So you got to pick in each day here. And I'm kind of curious to see what that exactly means if Brett Veach is trying to see if there's a difference in all of them. And I think this is where I probably should put in a disclaimer. No, just because they're visiting the Chiefs doesn't mean that they're inherently wanting to pick them and that they will pick them. It just means they have interest in some form or fashion. And a lot of the times when they have a visit, it's trying to figure out more information on the player and just the way he kind of carries himself. Because as much as you think stats are important, they are. It also is important how you would mesh into the team. I think that's what a lot of these are about. They're liked, but how much could you fit in with the Kansas City Chiefs? All right, who is a player that you must have on the Chiefs in 2024? Either a current free agent, such as Tyler Boyd, Odell Beckham Jr., or a wide receiver, O-lineman, defensive tackle, some draft pick, a quarterback, somebody you really want? Well, now's your time. Let me know in the comment section. If I see some good ones, maybe I'll make some videos on some players that you want. Maybe it'd be a nice, fun video to do here as we get closer to the NFL draft. All right, we got 3 other visits from the top 30, and they're all different positions. Miller Bradford, the TCU safety. Ben Sinnott, the Kansas State tight end. And then Rasheen Ali, the running back from Marshall. I really like Ben Sinnott of these 3. I think that's the one that we're probably looking at most. Multiple reasons. Kansas State guy, number 1. And Blake Bell is a free agent. So, he became a free agent. Now he probably won't re-sign. The Chiefs like to have 4 tight ends on their roster. In 53 men, I should say. Right now, they have 5 for the 90. Garrett Prince and Isaiah Gathings both were on the practice squad last year. Have to assume they're going to be there again. And so your 3 tight ends are Kelsey Gray and Irv Smith Jr. Ben Sinnott's a round 4, round 5 guy maybe, depending on where you got it. He fits the vibe. You get the 4 tight ends. He's a blocking tight end along with a receiving tight end. Past year at KSU, 676 yards, 6 touchdowns, just 2 drops. He is very much a Kansas City Chief tight end. I don't know if there's a way to describe that, but I think it's more or less that you just look at this and think, okay, we know that Ben Sinnott is from Kansas State. That's check 1. The Kansas City Chiefs love to get guys who are Wildcats. Number 2, he's got the build of a Noah Gray, Travis Kelce type guy, a little taller, a little bit of a, not as big, but still muscular. And then can move well, as agile, but can also block. So a lot of different things that I think the Chiefs really like. Just going to have to wait and see if Brett Veach pulls the trigger. All right, get excited, Chiefs Kingdom. We are literally less than 3 weeks away from the NFL draft. And so if you're excited, man, hit that subscribe button because we have Chiefs draft coverage, NFL draft coverage, all that and more coming to you right here on the Chiefs Report by Chat Sports. And if you are not subscribed, then you aren't alive. So hit that subscribe button and we will see you next time, Chiefs Kingdom. Peace out.